Welcome to part 61 of the tutorial series. Today, let's take a break from inventory systems. Before we get into the next system on the agenda, I wanted to take a small bite out of something that would have probably been a little too complicated back in the day, but will now seem relatively simple, I hope, so long as I can teach it well enough. So what we're going to create is a keypad and a door, and we're going to make it so that you have to enter the right combination into the keypad to access the door. So there will be a few moving parts. Let's start with the keypad. Scroll down to user interface, right click and go to user interface, widget blueprint, and we will call this utility underscore keypad. Then enter that blueprint. Attach the tab to the top. So let's select our canvas panel. We're going to come up here and select fill screen. And we're going to select custom, and on custom we will zoom into this little square here. Let's drop that height down to about, I don't know, say 200, and this is going to be our keypad. Next up, let's get ourselves a border, drag that onto the canvas panel. Let's make that panel fill up the entire spot. We'll get rid of that offset. And then we'll set the border to a basic blur. If we come to appearance and we see brush color here, we can zero those out and then put an alpha of 0.25 just to make it a little bit darker, just so it's easier for us to see the numbers come up. So next up, let's grab ourselves some text. This could be rich text if you wanted to change the programming later. Because I am going to keep to the same theme of this keypad, as you'll see in a moment with the font I select, I'm just going to select a normal text block. Drag that on top of the border, and we'll leave this font as default for now. Let's drop down that size so we can fit it right in there. Set it to centered for the text and also centered for the alignment, and type in 4 zeros to symbolize essentially a code. And because I forgot to do it already, let's wrap that with a vertical box. So with the vertical box selected, we'll fill out the canvas panel. Next up, let's get a spacer so we can determine the space between this code. And then let's get ourselves a uniform grid panel. Drag that onto the vertical box. Inside the uniform grid panel, we're going to put some buttons. So grab a button, drag it in there. With this uniform grid panel, similar to what we did before, we have rows and columns that we can attribute here. So we're going to do that, but first of all, let's set the style of this one button and then copy and paste that button so that we don't have to worry about changing the style of all of them. So let's start by naming the button 0. Then we'll come over to normal. I'm going to make the normal color of this button, let's say a 0.5. And then the important thing here is we want our hovered to be a different color. This is going to be important for later on. So my color is going to be 0 on red, 1 on green, 0 on blue, and I'm going to select 0.75 on the alpha. That's going to be what happens when it's hovered. Pressed, I'm going to that tint once again, and I'm going to select 0 on red, 1 on green and blue, and 1 on the alpha. Next up, I'm going to get some more text and attach that to the button. And this text is just going to say 0, like so. And I'll drop that size down to about 20. We'll make the button fill that space entirely, because when we add other things to the uniform grid panel, it'll all sort itself out. So let's grab that button, copy that, and paste another button there. We'll name this button _1, paste another one, _2. And we're going to do this for essentially 10 buttons for each of our numerical values, pasting on top of the uniform grid panel and renaming the button accordingly. So there are the 10 buttons we'll need from 0 to 9. Let's add another 2 because we'll make an enter and clear button as well. So button enter. And finally, pasting another button, button clear. And now we'll go through and arrange them just using the rows and columns we'll arrange them. We've done it before for the inventory, so I'm assuming if you've done the inventory, you already know how to do this, but I'll do the first few with you as it is. So button 9 we'll want at row 0, column 2, because remember that 0 counts, so it's 0, 1, 2, not 1, 2, 3. Button 8 we'll want at column 1, and button 7 we'll want at 0. Button 6 will be column 2, row 1. Button 5 will be column 1, row 1. And button 4 will be row 1, column 0. And then button 3, column 2, row 2. Then column 1, row 2. And finally, button 1 will be column 0, row 2. 0 button will be column 1, row 3. And then our enter button I'll put on the left, which will be row 3, column 0. And then our clear button will be 3 on row and 2 on column. And then we'll just have to go through and punch these in. So selecting the text block, then punching in the number. And I'll leave that one to you. And obviously those last 2 text blocks will need to be centered here, and we'll need to drop down the size to about, let's see what 10 looks like. Okay, it's not perfect, but you know what? It will do for now. We can come back and play with this a bit later if we want to. We can even remove the padding and see if that gives us our room. Oh, would you look at that? That's better. So remove the padding in the vertical box and we should be good to go. And now we'll add some room to our spacer just like that. We'll leave this as small as it is because we'll use this for other things later. So this is what our keypad should look like when it's done. You can import any font you want. I'm going to use the system font later on. So onto the coding. So we have 12 buttons and those 12 buttons are going to do different things. 0 to 9 are going to look pretty much the same. So let's just scroll down here and get unclicked for 0, unclicked for 1, unclicked for 2, and just keep doing this until you've got all the buttons in front of you. So clear and enter we'll use up here. They will do something different. So 0 to 9. What we're going to do is add another variable that's going to be called code input. And that's going to be, if we just drag this section up so we can see what's going on, that's going to be a string. And we're going to need one of these guys for almost every single piece of code here. Now, being that over here I have set this to 4 digits, 4 digits is the most I want for any code to be. So the first thing I'm going to do with the code as you hit a button is check the length. We can check that by typing len, and that is short for length. Returns the number of characters in the string. We'll drag off this and go lesser than integer, and we want to check if it's lesser than 4 or lesser than however many you want inside your code. And we'll check that first. Then, as long as that's lesser than, we're going to set code input, and we're going to set it using an append. So now we don't need to convert back to text. We can just grab the code input and punch in whatever number corresponds here. So in this case, it's 0. We can just plug that in there and be done with it. And that's all we're going to do for every single input. So we can actually copy this over and paste it again down here, plug that into 1, and all we have to change is the number 1. And one more time before I fast forward the footage, copy paste this code, accept the button, plug 2 into the branch, and then set the B in append to 2. I'll see you guys after we've done the rest. So there it is. That's what 0 to 9 should look like. Remembering that everything in this little check here should be 4, and everything in the append in the B section should be the corresponding number, just in case you were doing it really quickly and you might have accidentally done that. Just trying to jump ahead and see where you guys might have errors, but again, I could be wrong and you guys could all just be really on top of it. So now what happens when we press enter and clear? Well, clear is really easy. All we have to do is grab code input and that's it. Clear is done skis. Now enter is going to be just a little bit more complicated because we're going to need an interface. And to get that interface, we're going to need to create another variable. That variable is going to be parent. Now, you're going to have to trust me on this one because I can't show you where we're getting parent from yet. I can try and explain it, but it might be easier just to show it in this case. Again, I try and explain everything, but basically we're going to set this variable from inside the parent actor itself. So type in actor and hover over actor. We want an object reference. We don't need tick. We'll get rid of pre-construct. We don't even need construct. And then we'll go and create that interface. Go up to interfaces, right click. Let's create a blueprint interface, and this will be called I_keypad because we're going to use this interface for all keypads. This is assuming that you're using a lot of keypads, by the way. And I'll call this enter number. Compile, save, over to keypad. And we'll compile and save our utility keypad as well. So this is the great thing about interfaces. We don't need to have the event existing. We can just call that now. We can go enter number and that'll send a message out. And if it doesn't work, then, well, you know, it's like junk mail essentially. It's just going to get lost. But we're going to make it work. So don't worry about that. And that's pretty much it for the keypad. It's ready to go. So next time we're going to make a door and we're going to make that door open and shut as we normally would. And then once we're done with that, we're going to make the keypad work with the door. So we'll leave it there for now and I'll see you guys in the next one.